In today's episode, Candace Parker exposes Kathy Engelbert's silence. Adam Silver applauds Aaliyah Boston, Sabrina Ionescu. Dawn Staley weighs in while Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart's unrivaled faces WNBPA conflict questions today. Indiana Fever's plan goes under Amber Cox's microscope as Kelsey Mitchell's cryptic message worries Caitlin Clark.
Od codziennych vlogów po czerwony dywan, Freeze i Wersow przenieśli swój świat na wielki ekran i zderzyli się z ostrą krytyką. Co się wydarzyło i skąd takie słabe oceny?
To były najmocniejsze emocje, jakie czułem w życiu ever. No i fajny jest pierścionek, nie?
Ludzie, którzy ci od zawsze próbują wmówić, że to, co robisz, nie jest prawdziwe.
Cofnijmy się do początków, jak Freeze zbudował publiczność i fabrykę talentów oraz gdzie w tym wszystkim...
Candace Parker didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard for leadership and exposed the gap. She sat on the Post Moves podcast with Aaliyah Boston and told a quiet, devastating story. When she signed her Amazon broadcasting deal, Adam Silver texted congratulations immediately and made it feel personal. When she had her third child, he sent a message, a thoughtful baby gift, and another holiday note later. When she retired, he texted again, thanked her for everything, and welcomed her next chapter with care. Meanwhile, Kathy Engelbert offered a late in-person congrats months after retirement, and that was basically it. Candace didn't rant. She delivered receipts, calm as ever, and the room went still. That contrast wasn't petty, it was revealing, because relationships are leadership, and leadership is everything. Now the engaging fact becomes a real meaning you can't shrug off. The NBA learned decades ago that leagues are built on stars and trust. Fans buy the players, not the corporate slogans, and the NBA treats them accordingly. Adam Silver oversees hundreds of NBA players, plus G League and international interests, yet he remains present. The WNBA has roughly 150 players, yet its commissioner feels distant and transactional. That discrepancy isn't scheduling, it's philosophy, and players feel it with every silent milestone. Candace said it clearly. It isn't about gifts, it's about relationships, respect, and being seen. Sabrina Ionescu has said she interacts more with Adam Silver than her own commissioner. Elena Delle Donne reportedly echoed the same pattern of contact, and that says everything. Aaliyah Boston didn't even need to pile on. Her face told the truth. This is mentorship from one era of greatness to the next, and the blueprint is obvious. Invest in your stars, protect their moments, and lead from the front with humanity. The trend line in women's basketball is screaming for that approach, not spreadsheets. Viewership is rising, attendance is growing, and merch is flying because the players resonate. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Aaliyah Boston, Paige Bueckers, Sabrina Ionescu, they are the movement. So why does leadership still feel like a quarterly report, not a locker room presence? Even Adam Silver recently admitted the WNBA's challenges are not only financial, but relational. That's executive language for a trust deficit, and Candace just put names and moments on it. Now the impact lands like a backboard shattering in slow motion. When players believe the NBA commissioner cares more than their own, allegiance fractures quickly. Alignment dies, and once alignment dies, negotiations get ugly, and locker rooms get colder. Remember, a new collective bargaining agreement is looming, and emotions are already raw. Players are upset about salaries, officiating inconsistency, and silence during crucial moments of the season. Fans begged the league to protect Caitlin Clark when officiating spiraled, and leadership stayed quiet. That silence felt like policy, not accident, and fans noticed the absence immediately. Perception is reality, and right now the perception screams disconnected leadership at the very top. Rumors are circulating that some owners have cooled on Engelbert's tenure. Nothing official yet, but the whispers persist. Unverified claims from Nafisa Collier's exit interview inflamed everything, and they spread like wildfire. She allegedly heard, Players should be grateful, and worse, on their knees for the media deal. Engelbert's side has disputed that framing, but the damage is perception, and the perception stuck. Combine that with Candace's story, and you get a narrative that won't be softened. This wasn't a rookie venting on social media. This was Candace Parker, the standard. Two-time MVP, Finals MVP, Hall of Fame lock, and a pillar of the league's credibility. When she says, "I have a better relationship with Adam Silver," it changes the room. It tells every young star exactly where the warmth is and where the chill begins. And let's be honest, the WNBA is small enough to fix this in a week. A personalized message, a regular check-in, an open-door policy, and visits that feel genuine. Those gestures take minutes, but they build decades of goodwill and believable culture. It isn't a luxury. It's the job description for a commissioner of a rising league. Because players aren't just employees. They are the product, the promoters, and the beating heart. Candace's mini-story perfectly captured it. A baby gift, a retirement text, a human touch. Double fact, double meaning. Silver noticed every major milestone while WNBA leadership missed the moments. That's not a scheduling miss. That's a leadership miss. And players don't forget those. Especially not now, when every star has a microphone, a podcast, and millions of listeners. One calm anecdote from Candace did more than a dozen press conferences ever could. It gave fans permission to say the quiet part out loud without hesitation. The WNBA has outgrown distant leadership, and the audience can feel the culture gap. Treat this like the NBA's early superstar era, and the ceiling gets higher immediately. Ignore it, and the players will build their own momentum without you, loudly and publicly. So where do we go from here? And who fixes this trust? The fix isn't complicated, it's consistent, visible, and personal, and it starts yesterday. Build direct relationships with top players, then scale that effort across the full roster. Make officiating accountability transparent, and protect stars like Caitlin Clark visibly and publicly. Bring players into decision rooms early and let them own the league's story. That's not radical. It's basic modern leadership in a star-driven sport. Candace already handed the blueprint over for free, and the whole world heard it. The only question is whether the WNBA chooses connection over corporate distance right now. Quick gut check as fans who care about these women and this game deeply. If leadership can't or won't build relationships with the players, should Kathy Engelbert step aside? And who would you trust to replace her? Because the clock is ticking, the audience is growing, and the stars have already moved the culture. One commissioner can either move with them or watch the moment pass by forever. Candace spoke softly, revealed everything, and exposed the gap that decides the league's future.
Tej tutaj sali ciebie nie poznała, no bo wiadomo, że są twoi fani, którzy gdzieś tam ciebie śledzą i po każdym szczególe ciebie rozpoznają, ale jak ty się czujesz, Mikołaj, w takiej innej wersji? Bo ja jak się dowiedziałam, co wy tańczycie, to od razu się zastanawiałam, jak ty powstrzymasz ten twój uśmiech, który jest z tobą na co dzień.
Kurczę, to była trochę taka
The loudest story in women's basketball is the one nobody wants to headline. Dawn Staley stepped to the mic at SEC Media Day, and the room tensed. She called Nafisa Collier brave, then cooled the temperature with one line about negotiations. There's emotion, and there are facts, she said, steady and seasoned. Both sides are playing their roles, she added, and it will get done. Then she nodded to Kathy Engelbert's business wins, which wasn't exactly a pile-on. That balance felt intentional, and it tells you where the real tension lives. Collier's accusations lit the match. Staley tried to keep the building from burning. Here's the engaging fact. Clean and simple, and it changes everything. Unrivaled is co-founded by Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart, both union leaders recently or currently. They're launching a new off-season league while the WNBPA negotiates a new CBA. according to reports and public announcements, unrivaled plans guaranteed pay, and star forward equity. Some coverage has floated minimums around $250,000 for a short season. That is massive leverage, and leverage always changes the tone of a negotiation. Now the real meaning comes into focus, and it isn't subtle. This is a conflict of interest debate the mainstream barely whispers, and fans aren't blind. Union leaders shaping compensation structures in a competing product while pressing the WNBA hard. Even if technically compliant, the optics are tough and the questions are fair. Who decides rosters? Who sets tiers? And where does influence end or begin? Does a star pushing for revenue share also pilot a league offering guaranteed bags? Transparency is oxygen here, and right now, the air feels thin around the message. Staley's careful stance makes sense because she sees the whole chessboard clearly. She knows growth arrives with chaos, and chaos can topple good work quickly. She's lived eras with no WNBA and watched today's momentum explode overnight. So she said what veterans say in volatile rooms: keep emotion, find facts. Then she did something smarter. She credited Engelbert's business progress without endorsing everything. That's not fence-sitting. That's bridge building in a league that needs one desperately. Because here's the trend line nobody can deny. The players own the conversation. They own the audiences, the feeds, the podcasts, and the trust that moves markets. Collier spoke, the clip spread, and the narrative sprinted past official statements instantly. That's not a glitch. That's the modern economy of attention favoring the players. Which brings us to the impact, and it could reshape an entire offseason. If Unrivaled thrives, the players' bargaining power compounds with real alternatives at home. No more overseas grind for winter income unless they choose it as strategy. The WNBA must adapt to a world where its best can monetize everywhere, partner creatively, coordinate calendars, and install fairness guardrails that survive public scrutiny. Otherwise, the league risks split loyalties and parallel storylines that confuse sponsors. Fans aren't scared of new. They're scared of messy, and messy costs momentum. Dawn's mini-story at Media Day perfectly captures it. The college coach asked pro-business. She kept the spotlight on her team and still offered a veterans read. Emotion aside, get to facts. Facts create deals, not hashtags or pressers. That's wisdom talking, and it echoes through every negotiation room quietly. But facts must cover the full picture, including conflicts and optics. Double fact, double meaning. Collier and Stewart lead Unrivaled and the union space. Double fact, double meaning again. The CBA timeline and Unrivaled's launch window overlap. That overlap demands clarity, boundaries, and trust signals from every leader involved. The media sidestep makes it worse, because silence breeds suspicion faster than answers. You can't police every take, but you can name the conflict squarely, tell fans how decisions will be walled off and who recuses where necessary, announce independent oversight, make processes transparent, and remove the guesswork immediately. Because perception is the house you negotiate inside, and this one has cracked windows. Staley's measured quote actually offers the way forward if you listen closely. Emotion first, then facts, then resolutions that leave respect on both sides. It matches what Candace Parker demanded earlier: relationships and accountability, not slogans and spin. The WNBA's real superpower is alignment, and right now it's short on it. Fans want one thing above all else: clear leadership that protects stars and integrity. They want Caitlin Clark safe and promoted, Angel Reese celebrated, Aaliyah Boston elevated. They want Sabrina Ionescu and Elena Del Don heard without politics of silence. They want Nafisa Collier's vision judged fairly with conflicts addressed publicly and clearly. That's not too much. That's baseline if you've actually built a movement. Here's the harsh truth. Ignored conflicts become crisis currents that sweep seasons away. Because when players lose trust, they build their own lanes and take audiences. When owners lose trust, they push for resets at the very top quickly. And when fans lose trust, they won't wait around for press releases. They'll follow the players wherever the basketball feels honest and ambitious. If the WNBA gets ahead of this, the upside is enormous and immediate. Imagine coordinated calendars, fair compensation ladders, and transparent union governance with guardrails. Imagine Unrivaled as a partner pipeline, not a competitor with shadowed lines. Imagine a CBA framed around growth triggers, with salaries rising as ratings rise. That's how modern leagues scale without breaking the culture or the locker room. And yes, that means difficult conversations, public clarity, and less corporate fog. But that is what mature leagues do when the audience arrives early. We all see the moment, so stop whispering around the obvious questions. Call it plainly, fix it openly, then build bigger together with real trust. And if you're tired of the dance and want a fan's straight shot, should founders of Unrivaled temporarily recuse from WNBPA leadership during CBA talks to remove doubt, or is that overkill that slows useful change? Pick one, own it, and put the plan in writing publicly. Dawn Staley read the temperature and kept the room from boiling over. That's leadership too, measured, honest, and focused on outcomes, not applause. Because a deal will get done faster when the facts stand unafraid. The question is whether the league chooses clarity now or chaos later.
Ja bym się chyba nie zdecydowała, ale już dzisiaj słyszałam słyszałam od Kacpra jakieś informacje o podwójnym weselu, że takim mniejszym dla nas i drugim dla gości, więc kto wie, co tam się wydarzy na tym większym.
A propos wesela, czy wy już planujecie swoje?
No jeszcze nie mam pierścionka, więc no chciałabym, ale...
To szefowa przejmuje, w ogóle wszystko odpowiada, no na razie jeszcze...
No to odpowiedz to,
im
ty
dłużej,
powiedz, czemu nie mam pierścionka.
Dla mnie im dłużej
im.
temat jest takie podsycanie jest, to tym bardziej to przedłuża...
Misiek, jesteśmy na...
Indiana's plan sounds calm, but Kelsey Mitchell's message felt like a tremor. A Fever executive, Amber Cox, told IndyStar they're controlling the controllables this offseason. Translation, the rules might change, so the whiteboard changes daily and quietly. Core designations could shift, prioritization might tighten, and draft eligibility could be rewritten. Front offices hate unknowns, players hate delays, fans hate silence during big moments. So Indiana leans into scouting, development plans, and keeping relationships steady and honest. Meanwhile, a single Instagram post from Mitchell set the comments section on fire. Zero gone, she wrote, cryptic and loaded, and Fever Nation started decoding. Here's the engaging fact that matters most right now for Indiana. Kelsey Mitchell's value climbed after a monster stretch as the primary option. With Caitlin Clark out, she carried usage, volume, and late-game scoring responsibilities. Executives across the league noticed, and agents definitely noticed, because markets always do. Add looming CBA changes, and her free agency path becomes wider than usual. Uncertainty raises leverage, especially for guards who can create their own shot. Now, the real meaning, where the what now becomes what if. If Mitchell returns, the fit must be crystal clear and embraced fully. Caitlin Clark will dominate touches. Aaliyah Boston will anchor inside. Spacing matters. Mitchell can thrive off movement, second side creation, and late clock relief. But that requires buy-in to role clarity, defensive standards, and shared crunch time rules. The Fever must build an identity that makes every role feel starring. If Mitchell leaves, Indiana loses a proven bucket getter and a defensive attention magnet. Then the blueprint shifts toward two-way wings, secondary playmaking, and size with toughness. They'll need an enforcer archetype, not to fight, but to set tone. Someone who protects stars within the rules and never blinks when games turn chippy. Fans have begged for it since Caitlin's welcome to the league moments got way too physical. That's not revenge, that's culture. And culture wins close series in June. the impact reaches beyond one guard because Indiana's window is opening quickly. Caitlin Clark returns with fresh legs and a point to prove. Aaliyah Boston keeps leveling up, the classic franchise big every contender needs. Lexi Hull has carved a role as a stopper who moves without the ball. The rest becomes fit, depth, and a bench that holds leads on bad nights. Windows close fast. Here's a quick mini-story that framed this entire conversation for fans. The hospital version of the Fever still pushed champions to uncomfortable places. That wasn't luck. That was grit, pace, and a belief in ball movement. Now imagine that same edge with Clark's gravity and Boston's poise together again. Open threes multiply. Backside cutters get fed. Defenses pick their poison nightly. You want a trend line to trust, not hype, just numbers and eyes. When elite shooters and passers share the floor, role players' percentages spike. Defenses load up, skip passes fly. The weak side becomes the buffet line. Indiana can win that way consistently if they commit to balance and toughness. But they need clarity at guard now, not in April or May. Mitchell's post wasn't a farewell. It was a fork in the road publicly. It told the league she knows her worth and her role preferences. And for Indiana, that forces the only responsible question: what are we building? A heliocentric offense around Caitlin with layers of shooting and switchable wings? Or a dual creator attack that splits usage and forces mismatches from both sides? Neither is wrong. Confusion is the only wrong option at this level. Double fact, double meaning time that matters in negotiations and locker rooms. Indiana has only a handful of players locked in long-term beyond next season, and the CBA could alter contract tools that keep cores intact easily. That combination makes decisiveness a competitive advantage in February, not just July. It also makes communication with stars the single most valuable currency. There's also the officiating cloud that fans won't stop mentioning and shouldn't. Indiana cannot control the whistles, but they can control the roster response. You add size, verticality, and 5-foul discipline so opponents stop hunting cheap hits. You diversify inbound sets and break pressure with misdirection to protect stars early. You put a grown-up on the floor who stares down chaos and smiles. That's a roster choice, not a wish, and every contender makes it. Back to Mitchell because she deserves that spotlight for this moment. She gave Indiana years of buckets and major moments without complaint publicly. She earned the right to test the market and ask for clarity. If she returns, celebrate it and build around her strengths thoughtfully. If she leaves, treat it like business, not betrayal, and move efficiently. Either way, the team's identity must be visible by training camp's first whistle. Think physical defense, outrun everybody, and punish help with shooters and cuts. The rest writes itself, because winning systems sell themselves every night. Amber Cox said, "Control the controllables," and it landed like a mantra. It's practical, even if fans prefer fireworks and trade machine mock-ups. Control looks like honest exit interviews, individual growth plans, and relentless scouting. It also looks like calling officials supervisors privately with timestamps, calmly and persistently, because respect gets earned on film, not in the press room. Here's the final calculation that matters for Indiana's spring and summer. If Clark returns healthy, Boston ascends, and the roster adds toughness. They contend. If Mitchell stays and buys into a defined role, the ceiling climbs higher. If she goes, Indiana must replace scoring with more stops and cleaner spacing. None of those scenarios work without commitment to identity and chemistry early. You can't cram cohesion into May and pretend it's organic. So let me throw it to you. Fever faithful, should Indiana push hard to re-sign Kelsey Mitchell as a dynamic secondary scorer, or pivot now toward tougher two-way depth around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston? Pick a lane and sprint, because hesitation is the slowest turnover in basketball. the league is getting faster, stronger, louder, and more tactical nightly. Indiana can match that wave and ride it, or watch it crash by. This offseason is about decisions, definitions, and messages that players actually feel. Make the call, own the identity, and let the window swing open wider.